Welcome to Inside the Director Circle and this episode on energy hacks to boost your productivity. I'm Jason Langford Brown, your host, founder of the Director Circle and practicing business advisor and coaching psychologist. In our last episode, we talked about productivity as a leader and how it's all about energy. Great conversation with Claire and Graham, who have joined us again today. Claire is the founder of 4D, Claire Fudge. Claire is a clinical nutritionist and dietitian by trade, also still a triathlete, fresh back from the World Championship Ironman in Hawaii. And Claire is also joined by Graham Nicholl, Managing Director of Atlanta. Graham has held many senior positions in professional services firms over recent years, but previous to that was an entrepreneur in the fitness industry. And like Claire, still very active, has historically done the marathon de Sablas, and has been fortunate enough to join me on a couple of tough guys over the years. So thank you for both joining us. And just very quickly before we get into the discussion, remember this is just a snapshot of what happens within our business leader community. If you want to get more involved or access further insights, just visit us at directors-circle.com. So thank you again for joining us again both. Great conversation in the last episode about the notion of energy and how we can find more of that as leaders to make us more productive. And I think we've also got to the point of actually how we can actually improve the quality of our work, but also make sure we make time for our health and our wider life outside of work. And what I wanted to do over the next 20 minutes or so is really just try and pick both of your brains to get some hacks on how we can really start to drive this energy up for ourselves as leaders, but also for our people. But I just thought I'd maybe start talking about sleep, because I think that is the foundation of everything. What would be maybe your top 3 hacks for people that they could really improve the quality of their sleep?
Number one, I would say data. So with my clients, I always say, let's collect some data. Then once you've got the data, analyze it and do something with it. So there's no point in collecting it if you don't do anything with it. So have a look at your sleep patterns, have a look at the quality of your sleep. You don't need to be a sleep expert to be able to actually see what patterns you have and actually then start to make some changes. So one of the first things I'd say is maybe have a look at whether you need to go to bed a little bit earlier, and that means starting to think about winding down a little bit earlier. Have a look at the data in terms of actually when you have poor sleep, what happens? Does it mean that you are then overeating or maybe choosing slightly inappropriate choices during the day? So have a look at the impact of that poor sleep to help you change your sleeping patterns. Take note of when you're really, really tired. And actually, there is evidence to suggest that actually just closing your eyes for 10 minutes, you won't go to sleep, or maybe you will if you're really tired, but close your eyes for 10 minutes and that's enough to rejuvenate yourself. If you are working from home or if you've got an office where they allow you to go and have a quick snooze somewhere, know that from a circadian rhythm, so a time, a body clock perspective, so chronologically, we know that there's dips in our energy levels around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's actually a perfect time to have a nap. So if you feel that you're struggling and you have got somewhere that you can go and close your eyes for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you will be rejuvenated after it. Another top tip, if you are going to have a quick nap, and I'm talking about like a 20-minute nap here, is if you drink coffee, if you have a really strong shot of caffeine, like an espresso, before you have your nap, when you wake up from that nap, the caffeine will have kicked in and you'll actually be awake. So if you really need to sleep, that's the way to do it.
Wow, that's great. I mean, lots of tips in there, all driven by data, Claire, which I'll share one of my own experiences on that shortly. But I suppose one thing from that is how do people do that? How can people capture that data in a simple way? What would be your advice on that?
Question. There are so many wearable devices now. So are they all brilliant? No, but it gives us more of an idea than not doing anything about it. So number one, like I say, if you're going to collect it, do something with it. Otherwise it's worth nothing. So some of your wearables, it could be something, for example, like a Fitbit, it could be a Garmin, it could be an Apple Watch. They will all collect basic data about your sleep. They give you some indication about sleep. So I say that's the best place to start in terms of just start looking at it before you do anything with it. So that's the best way to collect that data. And then also just taking notes about, okay, when I've had 5 hours sleep, what happened today? What happened to my eating? Did I feel really dehydrated? Did I want to then, go home and open a bottle of wine? Did it have an impact at my day at work? Maybe my mood. So start to jot notes down so that you're collecting it in a format that is about your day and then also about your sleep.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly share my own example, Claire, after I followed your advice on the data. I love that hack on the caffeine before a nap. By the way, I hadn't heard that one before. That's a great idea. But my own experience with caffeine was that the data showed me that I was literally crashing at about 8-9 o'clock at night. And I just thought I was exhausted, working too hard. You kind of tell yourself all sorts of stories, don't you, really? But I started to recognize that my caffeine story actually was I was drinking caffeine in the morning, coffee, but I was continuing to drink caffeine through tea all the way through the afternoon. And you'll probably, this is a very amateur description of caffeine here, Claire, so forgive me, but kind of caffeine attaches to the nodes in your brain that kind of just mask sleepiness. And as it wears off, all that sleepiness is built up and just releases itself. And that's what was happening for me. So all that caffeine was building up. And when it finally worn off about 8 o'clock in the evening, when I stopped drinking tea at 4 or 5 o'clock, I just literally fell asleep. And the minute I stopped drinking caffeine after lunchtime, the crash ended. So, but it was the data that kind of led me to that place. So it's, I never would have spotted that without the data. So yeah, thank you. Graham, for you, top tips on sleep for you?
Ooh, I don't know, probably like everyone else, I go through phases of really good sleep and less so good sleep. I think the bits, and I've not done the analysis that Claire's referenced, although I have recently changed from an Apple Watch to a Garmin, and I've through that on the app, actually it gives quite a nice, and that shows not very deep sleep last night.
There's quite a bit of pink on there.
there's a lot of pink on there. So I was out quite late last night at the football, so, and had a couple of glasses of wine, so I think that might have contributed. I think that's where I would start is, I know that if I drink alcohol into the evening, I often snack more, go to bed with a full stomach and kind of alcohol that the body's digesting. And I know categorically midway through the night, I'll wake up and just can't get back to sleep. So actually, minimizing that, I think, is a key part. But eating as well, if I eat generally beyond 8 o'clock at night, ideally kind of not beyond 7 o'clock at night, then again, going to bed, and I can certainly kind of feel that. The third and final bit that I used to, if I woke in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep, I used to think I'm just going to try and lie there and just force myself to sleep. And two things that came out of the back of reading a book on mindfulness. One was trying to focus on kind of breathing, mindfulness, and that'll give you a better chance of going to sleep. But the second one is if I'm really thinking about something, I just get up, go and do a bit of work if that's what I'm thinking about, at least to get things out of the mind. I then typically go back to bed and read part of a novel that I'm in the middle of reading, and that then takes my mind completely away. And then when I actually try and go back to sleep, the mind's far clearer. So I think for me, that's something that's the mindfulness and the don't let the thing fester, go and do something about it. At least then you're addressing the thing that's probably keeping you awake. And after a little bit, you realise it wasn't actually that big a thing anyway. So getting back to sleep.
I'm going to let Claire come in and just maybe add a professional opinion on some of your ideas there, Graham. But that last one resonates with me, and it always makes me think of Dolly Parton, for those old enough to remember Dolly Parton. But she always said she always writes stuff down in a book next to her bed, and some of her best songs, because we all do it, don't we? We're thinking about stuff, and I just think that notion. So mine is I have a book by the side of my bed, so if it comes in, I'll just write it down. The challenge has been able to read it in the morning, but I think you're right. However you do it, you can't fight it. If it's there, just accept it's there. Try and externalize it, and then you've got more chance of sleeping. But Claire, have you got any kind of professional insights into what Graham just said, just for those listening, just so as to why they're good things to do?
I think, Graham, what you said about, like, you were talking actually about a pattern there. You were saying, like, I recognize that when I eat like later than 8 o'clock, it affects my sleep. So and that's really good for people to be able to collect this data, because that's data that's personal to you, and you can make a personal change and help improve your sleep without even having really any knowledge. So I think that's really great that you brought that up. And when we eat late in the evening, and that can be different for different people depending on what time they're going to sleep, but it also depends on what you were eating, because different foods are going to metabolize at different rates. So to give you an example, I'm sure you've all heard about the meat sweats, and that's no scientific word, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because when you have a meal that's very, very high in protein, it increases the thermic energy from food. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when you metabolize, you create extra heat to be able to break down that food and metabolize that food. So when you go to bed, one of the onset of sleep, your body temperature actually lowers, and that's why we often say have a cooler room. So if you've just eaten a really meal high in protein very late in the evening, you're going to increase to a certain degree the amount of energy that you're producing inside your body, the amount of heat you're producing, and therefore you go to bed and you might have a good sweat when you go to bed, which is not useful for sleep. So you know, that is really, really important to think about what we're eating and the time of eating, and you know, there's lots of health consequences of eating sort of late into the evening as well. But yeah, thinking about your timing of what you're eating, and of course, you know, you touched there, Graham, on alcohol, and you know, alcohol often wakes us up. One, because we often need to wake up and go for a pee, or two, you feel really dehydrated. But three, alcohol actually lowers blood sugar levels. So if you haven't eaten a lot when you were drinking, it will actually wake you up. So your body's brilliant because it wants to obviously keep you alive. So a lower level of sugar in your blood will actually wake you up. So that could be a reason also when you're drinking alcohol why you have a more unsettled evening.
That's great. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Claire. So you talked about protein there. So maybe let's move on to the other important area for energy, which is fuel. What would be your top 3 hacks for people to increase their energy by improving the fuel they put in their body?
Yeah.
I'm assuming drink more isn't one of them. Drink more alcohol.
Well,
drink more alcohol.
do you know what? It's boring, but it's about everything in balance. Like, this is not about not having the things you enjoy. You know, we talked on the last episode about, you know, life, and it's really important that you have that really great balance between, you know, optimizing your health and enjoying your life. And part of that, if you enjoy a drink, that's absolutely fine, but is it appropriate every day? Probably not. So it's kind of when you do that. So top 3 things really from a fueling perspective is, again, collect data, because if you don't have any idea what you're doing, then how are you going to change it? So it's really important that you look at what are your patterns? And people often say to me, well, is breakfast really important? Should I be intermittent fasting? Have a look at what you do, and on a personal level, what actually works for you. So if you are somebody who maybe does work out or does some training, then the answer is breakfast probably is extremely important for you, because depending on what you want to get out of that training, you are going to need to refuel and have breakfast to be able to concentrate, to be able to grow muscle, whatever it is, and regenerate your glycogen stores as well. If you are somebody who never really feels like having breakfast, and you may get to lunchtime and you don't overeat, then that may be beneficial for you from a fasting perspective. But for many of us, and I can certainly think of many times like this, actually, if you miss out eating in the morning, your concentration is affected. You might be really grouchy at work. You may be reaching for more and more caffeine. And when it comes to lunchtime, you know, if you're going out maybe in town or going downstairs and getting something to eat, you know, you might end up going, oh, I didn't have breakfast, so I'll have some of this, or, you know, I feel really hungry, and then you almost overeat, or you maybe reach for things to eat that you wouldn't necessarily have chosen if you had eaten breakfast. So on that point, collect data, think about what is your pattern, and how do you react to how long are gaps in food that you're having. And if you are somebody that tends to overeat, if you don't eat regularly, then eat regularly, because we know generally people who miss meals, but not always, generally will overeat at the next meal. Now there was some recent research actually to show that I think it was 60% of people are eating somewhere between 40 and 50% of their energy intake at their evening meal in the evening. So, and I'm sure we can all resonate with that. So when we're fueling, think about the consistency, not having huge gaps between eating, and also managing energy levels. The third point would be think about what you are having in that food, because you need a little bit of protein in there to keep you feeling fuller for longer. It helps create satiety, so that feeling of fullness. And there are many reasons we could go into why we might need protein at each of those meals, but having a little bit of protein is going to keep us feeling a little bit fuller for a bit longer, and it might prevent again, scrabbling around in the desk drawer trying to find, you know, some chocolate that you had in there from 2 months ago, or going to the canteen or wherever it might be to get that afternoon chocolate bar.
Yeah.
So those would be my main points.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff in there, Claire, and stuff that resonates with me again. And the protein one is interesting. For longer, it's definitely been increasing the protein in my diet. You're right. I wasn't reaching for those things I used to reach for because I was hungry. It also makes me think of when I was in America watching some trashy Housewives from Atlanta type program. These all gorgeous stick thin women were at a barbecue saying to each other, eat the protein, it makes you thin," which is not quite true, I know, but you can kind of see
where it's come from.
You can see where it's come from. Absolutely. And I think that pattern thing is important as well, because I think you're right. You know, the pattern is your own, isn't it? We're all slightly different. And I used to fast till lunchtime, and actually I didn't overeat as a consequence. I could get to lunchtime and then eat lunch and eat dinner. But I recognised quite quickly, with your help, it has to be said, that I was getting no benefit from my training. I always train early in the morning. So, you know, when I started to eat breakfast, my energy went through the roof through the course of the day, but actually my muscle tone went up almost immediately because I was doing all this training and not feeling the training I was doing. So yeah, it is. I think that's a really interesting point. Greg, you've I said in the intro, I know it was a few years ago now you did the Marathon de Sablas, and I know you and I have done a few extreme events. So I know you still keep fit, but what would be your top 3 fuel hacks for people to?
Well, firstly, I'm certainly going to pick up that protein one, because this is my naivety. I always thought it was the got to eat fiber and that'll keep me full, and therefore actually I'd probably focus on the wrong thing. So I'm going to actually revisit my protein intake, because from a meal perspective. So three things. One that people often talk about, but probably falls by the wayside, is drinking plenty of water. Because I feel so much better when actually you take that glass of water and you feel that you can almost feel the body getting rehydrated. But the problem with that is it's probably been dehydrated because you're feeling it so much. So that kind of regularity. And my eldest son, he's got this massive bottle of water that he just carries around because he's so into his sport, and that reminds me to make sure that I'm drinking plenty. Second is snacking, which sounds a bit strange as a kind of top tip. I do have a tendency to go and try and snack, but actually it's therefore important to have the right type of snacks on hand, because if that piece of fruit isn't there by the side of my desk in the office, then guess what? I'd go down to the shop with the vending machine and I'd probably get something that is less beneficial. So, and actually I think having a snacking regularly, but on the right stuff, helps personally me, certainly from a kind of energy level. And then the third and final bit, you talk about kind of exercise and working out. That's a big part of what I find keeps me healthy and active, but it's the eating afterwards that kind of refueling the body. That if I don't do that, then and I wait a couple of hours, then I certainly notice the energy levels start to come back down very quickly. Whereas if I'm always refueling, I feel as if I'm getting more of the benefits from the exercise that I do.
Yeah, as you were speaking, Graham, I could just hear all the things Claire said to me over the years, bouncing around my head. So, so I think you're definitely on the right track. But something you said there, actually, I think people should definitely. I think the preparation is massive. I think, if you don't prepare, then you tend to grab whatever's around, and it's not always good. But you said, how you feel after you drink, and I think actually just generally listening to how you feel around what food does to you. I think people don't tune into their bodies. Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? Am I, I think that word feel for me is really, really powerful. Okay, let's do the last one. We've done sleep, we've done fuel. So let's look at movement. Now I say movement because I think a lot of people, and probably it's more prevalent when people are in weight loss rather than energy mode. I think they have to go to the gym and smash themselves, to lose weight. If you feel yourself well and you're well rested, as long as you move, you're going to be pretty healthy. I think you'd agree with that. But what would be your top 3 hacks for moving more, whether it is for energy or for those that are more interested in being trimmer? What would they be?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think they all sit together. So I think movement in general, we should all be thinking about, whether you are an athlete or whether you're somebody who wants to lose weight or whether you're somebody thinking about health. So again, my number one is always know what you're doing. What are you doing at the moment? Because some people think that they actually move quite a lot. And again, it's really easy. You can either jot down kind of, how many hours are you actually sat down? How often are you stepping away from your laptop or computer? In the world that we live in right now, it's so easy for us to sit down. So again, if you've got any wearables that you can use, you can, again, it's a crude measure. You can measure how much you're moving. So it could be the number of steps. You can even do that on a phone now if you keep it in your pocket. So, thinking about a simple one would be if you're a desk-based job, we should actually be moving every 40 to 50 minutes. So, we were talking in the last episode about time blocking, actually make sure that you maybe put an alarm on your phone. Make sure that you move every 50 minutes. That could be to go and rehydrate, to go and get a cup of tea, go and get a drink of water, whatever it might be. So move away from your desk or what you're doing every 40 to 50 minutes. And I would personally put an alarm on until you're used to doing that. Number two would be thinking about what we think of as like non-exercise, we call it non-exercise thermogenesis. So it's the activity that we're doing that isn't sport. And actually we've got like 15 hours of waking hours where we can do this. This is like free energy. So that could be that, it is the simple things. It could be something like cleaning, it could be hoovering. If you're at home and working from home, I often say to people, okay, in that couple of minutes that you're taking away in that 50 minutes has come up, take 5 minutes away from the screen, have a little tiny short list. So it could be that you hoover a bedroom, it could be whatever it is. So hoovering, cleaning, walking, gardening, it could be even standing at your desk. All of these things are non-exercise thermogenesis. So it's going to burn energy, it's going to utilize energy. Really, really easy to do. And the other thing would be is if the word exercise or thinking about going home and going to the gym or doing something you don't particularly enjoy or don't feel you have time for, think of it as movement. Actually, could I get home and just go out for 15 minutes? Because good, better, best, 15 minutes is better than doing nothing. And once you start 15 minutes, do you know what? Week 2 in there, you might go out for 20 minutes because it feels so good. So what I would say is start to build like a ladder of starting somewhere and start small and think of it, it's the best thing that I can do today is do 15 minutes when I get home or at lunchtime.
Yeah, that non-exercise, Claire, you shared that with me. I think, you said there's twice as many of our calories are going to be burnt on non-exercise, the word I can't repeat that you mentioned there, versus going to the gym and doing training. And just by increasing that consciously over the last, I think it was last week I measured it. In 2 weeks, I lost 3 kilograms. And all I did was just started to walk up and down the garden when the kettle was boiling, and like you said, stand up a couple of times a day when I wouldn't have stood up before. And I just was just like astounded at how just 3 kilos just disappeared just because I moved a bit more. I didn't go to the gym anymore. And I think your point about a little, I think as well, I don't, if I can't go for an hour, and I know Graham and I have talked about this before, if I only got 20 minutes, I'll do 20 minutes because 20 minutes is better than nothing, isn't it? So I think that's a really powerful message.
The big part is the consistency of it. So you were talking about like every time the kettle boils. Well, you so consistently have a cup of tea that you can so consistently walk down to the garden and back, so, and the consistency is what builds that change as well.
Habit stacking, we call it.
Yeah.
In the habit world. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Graham, for you mentioned the last episode, Graham, about time boxing, and something that I do is I actually my gym time, I time box 5 times a week, and I probably hit it 4 times, which is so I don't beat myself up if I don't hit it every time it's in my diary. But for me, that's a real, if it's not in your diary, it doesn't happen. And you mentioned that. But what would be maybe your top 3 hacks for moving more or exercising more consistently?
Yeah, so I'm going to go off piece slightly and not answer your question straight away, but just going back to the last episode, we were talking about that kind of leadership shadow and what you've done to help people to think about their health and well-being and or energy. And one of the things that we've implemented in a previous organisation is everyone would say, to Claire's point, take that 10 minutes every hour to go and do something. But the flip side is, yes, but I've got hour meetings. I've always got hour meetings. They start in the hour, they finish in the hour. So we implemented that, okay, our meetings should all become 50-minute meetings, and half an hour meetings should all become 25-minute meetings. That's great in theory, but people are comfortable finishing on the hour. So, and you found that people started on the hour and they stuck into that extra 5 or 10 minutes that they should have let. So we changed it and said, okay, every meeting starts 5 past the hour or 35 past the hour, because people were still comfortable at finishing meetings on the hour mark. But it meant that people had breaks in between the meetings. They could get up and walk and go to the toilet and things like that. So I think that is something that can help achieve what Claire said, and kind of goes and counters what people often would say the challenge is that I'm managed by my diary and meetings that I've got. But to your point around 3 tips, I'd say the first one is mindset, because I hear so many people that say either I don't like exercise, or they say, oh, I've got to go to the gym, or I must do this, and therefore it becomes a chore, as opposed to I have the opportunity or I have the privilege to be able to. And it makes, if you've changed your mindset, kind of links into my kind of second point, which is routine. I don't know the full science behind this, but I think it's something like if you do something for 21 days on the trot, you're likely to make it a habit. I think getting into that routine, so you've diarised things. For me, if I don't exercise first thing in the morning, I probably don't get round to it. So my routine is my alarm goes off, and whether it's walking the dog or jumping on the bike or going for a run or doing something, that even if it's just for 20 minutes or half an hour in the morning. So routine, I think, is really, really important. And third and final bit is try different things to see what you enjoy that gets you active. Because if you force yourself to try and go to the gym and you hate it, guess what? You won't keep doing it. And mindset shift that I've seen is, it used to be, unless I've got an hour to go for a workout, it's not worth it. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And actually the greatest pleasure I get is taking the dog for a walk, fresh air, exercise, and spend time with someone who listens intently and doesn't necessarily disagree with everything that I say. It's a pleasure in the morning. So yeah, but those would be my 3.
They're great, Brad. It's just maybe just add to that with an actual real story. I won't share the person is, but that mindset and that joy for me are intrinsically linked. So I was talking to a leadership group a few weeks back, and one of the members of that leadership group wanted to be healthier. She started off by saying she wanted to lose weight, but she actually wanted to be healthier and have more energy, which fits very much with our conversation today. And I asked what she was doing, and she said, oh, I'm trying to go from couch to 5K, which I know a lot of people have got on that journey. And I said, okay, so tell me what's going on. She said, well, I'm really struggling because I'm a bit overweight and my joints are hurting. and it kind of went on like that. And I went, okay, so why are you doing 5K? Well, because, what most people do, I want to be healthier, I want to be slimmer, I need to go and run or go to the gym or do something really exertive. And I had a conversation and that said, well, why don't you start with walking? And it turns out she had a dog, but she wasn't walking the dog. And then said, why, if your joints are hurting, why don't what have you thought about things like yoga? She said, oh, I love Pilates, but because I'm trying to be fitter, I don't think there's much point. I went, okay, well, if you just fuel aside, diet aside, if you walked the dog every day and did a couple of Pilates classes, it would be like. And it goes to your point, Graham, about do something you enjoy. And, it always astounds me. Some of the fittest people I see they say they don't do anything. And then you find out they like dancing and all they do is dance. And they're often the leanest, fittest people I see. But they're just doing something they love. It doesn't matter what you do, does it really? So I think you're right. Just changing the narrative about it doesn't matter what you do, really. If you enjoy it, you'll stick with it. And some of the more surprising things are often better for you as well. It's better to do Pilates than to go for a run, particularly if you're overweight. Yeah, Claire, I don't know if you wanted to add to anything on that from a professional perspective.
No, I think also the to pick up Graham on your point about routine, if you start small and you do something that you enjoy, you will get that consistency, and it's the consistency is where we see changes. I always talk about it's not the one-off. You can go and break yourself, go out there and try and do a 10-mile run when you haven't run for years, but you used to be a runner. Then you won't, then you'll get injured and you won't run for another 2 months. So it's starting off small and consistently being able to keep it in there. So I really like that idea of, dog walking is perfect, isn't it? Because it is something you have to do every day in terms of the dog needs walking at some point, but actually that you might only go out for 10 minutes, or you might choose to go out for an extra 10 minutes because you want to get away. So I think something small that you really enjoy is really important.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Guys, as ever, we never have enough time to do these subjects justice, but I thought maybe we'd just finish off this discussion with what would be, you think, the one thing, when you reflect back on your own personal journeys, the one thing, one hack you were given that made the biggest difference to your energy level and your health and well-being? It's probably a big question, but
what, I'm actually gonna go with I know from a background I'm all about nutrition, but this all sits together, is sleep. Because I think as an athlete myself, as a businesswoman, I think the one thing that I certainly neglect is sleep, because where you're trying to cram in so much. And I think the impact on that, in terms of impact on your day, on your training, on what you eat, on how you feel, on your mood, that for me is a game changer. To actually allow myself to have a 20-minute kip during the day where I can is transformational for me.
Thanks, Claire. And Graham, for you?
So I'm actually going to come back to something that Claire said a couple of times, is data and kind of measuring things, but doing something with it. Because actually in the world of business, people focus on the things you measure, and you can manage the things you measure. So actually, I think that the best thing I've ever invested in is some form of device. So I use a Garmin now, but I've used different things over the years, because that actually helps me focus on doing more of that stuff that isn't the working out exercise. Because I like to say, if I haven't worked out today, have I done my X flights of stairs? Have I done my X steps? And that actually encourages or forces me to get up and do something a bit more when, and it shocked me, because I used to, if I wasn't doing a workout, I might do 1,500 or 2,000 steps in a day, because I'd get up, I'd get in the car, drive to the office, I'd go to my desk. So that for me was a really big one. Kind of measuring that data helps you then make decisions and to do something different.
Yeah, and I think a big takeaway for this conversation today for me is just that, that just having that foundation of information is so important. And you're right, Graham. There's so many devices now. There's even rings now, isn't there? There's so many choices. So I like a real watch, but you can wear a ring. It's so the ways to do it. I agree with the sleep point. I think probably though my biggest game changer probably was realizing that when you try and deprive yourself of something, of food, when you're maybe chasing a few calories or a few pounds, actually has a complete reverse effect. You end up, you cannot fight your body's need to look after itself. So I find when I eat more at the right times and the right things, I just suddenly don't. I always thought it was a willpower issue, like a willpower issue about chocolate or whatever else, and it isn't. It's just your body saying, I'm depleted and I'm just going to grab whatever I can. It's probably the wrong stuff. So the minute I stopped trying to cheat myself, I suddenly found it wasn't even difficult. You just don't crave things that you do when you're hungry. So that was my takeaway. Graham, Claire, thank you again for your time. Some fabulous insights. I'm sure our listeners will enjoy those. In the next episode, we'll be changing the conversation slightly. We'll be doubling down on the conversation of culture and what is good culture and how do we transform culture. So tune in and look out for that episode. But in the meantime, if you need more information on this subject, you can reach out to Claire. I'm sure Graham is always up for a conversation on this. And obviously you can find us at directors-circle.com. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to Inside the Directors Circle.